Hello, so this is going to be a tutorial, or a bunch of tutorials on how to make trees, and I'm going to put these in CryEngine at the end. So, I'm going to break this into a few different videos, I think, because it's quite a, reasonably long process. So the first thing that we need to do if we want to make a tree is to gather some reference, and I think this is one of the easiest parts of this process to overlook, but it's, well, certainly from my experience I'd say if you don't do this properly you'll end up just kind of confused, and it makes it hard to focus on what you need to do. So in terms of gathering reference, what I suggest is that you need basically reference for the actual tree and the structure of the kind of the trunk and the branches. So that's what I've got here, and these screenshots that I've got, or these photos that I've got, all come from the same tree, so they're all kind of consistent with each other. So that's the actual tree, and you can see it's not a very good photo. The light wasn't very good, and it was just on my phone. But it's fine for me to see roughly the shape of this. I've also got some branches, so I've got a good idea of the branch structure and the leaf structure that comes out of this. So I've got a few of these. I've got a load more as well. This is one way that you can go about making your textures for your branches as well, just by taking these photos. The best thing to do is to get it silhouetted against a cloudy sky, so that there's not too much light coming from behind. This wasn't, again, it wasn't a very good day. It's winter here, so it's not the best time to take pictures. But these, I'm just going to use these for reference. So I've also got some bark, and again this is the actual bark from this tree, so I just walked up to it and took a photo. So I could maybe make a tiling texture out of that. There's probably a little bit too much sunlight on this really for that to be ideal. There's another one showing some of the moss up the side of it. But I have all the components to build my tree from here. The last thing that I've got is a photo of, I've just downloaded this off Google, I just found it on Google Images. So these are the correct species of leaves, but these don't actually come from this exact tree. Probably would have been better to pick some leaves off and take some photos of them. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these leaves, and I'm going to make a texture sheet out of them. So I'm just going to duplicate that layer, and then I'm going to cut out a leaf. So I'm just going to use the lasso tool for this, and I'll just cut out this leaf. So you can see I'm coming slightly inside it, just so that I don't leave any seam. I'm also doing this with a mouse because it's a bit of a pain to record my screen with the tablet. Let's just get around that quickly. So I suggest you sort of pause the video here and cut out some leaves for yourself, just like that, and you can put them onto a new copy. Obviously do it a lot neater than that. But get a selection of leaves like that. Okay, so when you've done that you should end up with something like this. So I've just got these leaves that I've cut out, and they're ready to go. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this, obviously I've cropped this image down a little bit, and what I'm going to do is make this into a usable texture. So I'll just take all of I've got the leaves on 3 separate layers, and I'll just merge those layers together. In fact, I'll duplicate them first just in case. merge them, and I'm just going to put some padding underneath. For this, I'm actually just going to get some of the green off the leaves and just put that on. Like this. So you could pad these properly. I'll show you how to pad things properly once we get to making our proper diffuse textures. For this I'm not too bothered. You can see there's a few little mistakes up here as well. In fact, what I might do is just paint that out a bit. Okay. Right, so I've got my leaves on a green background, so we shouldn't see too much bleeding around the edges. What I'll do now is just make an alpha channel, so I've actually got an alpha channel, just delete that. Pretend I didn't have one. Oops. Okay, so with our leaves set up, let's get the magic wand and just select. We can invert that, so we've just selected those actual leaves, or you can just control and click on that little thumbnail there to get that selection. And if you go to channels, add new channel, and just get a white brush and just fill that in white like that. So now we've got an alpha channel around where our leaves are. Okay, so I'll save this, and I'm going to save it as a TIFF file that cuts out too. TIFF files tend to work. I'm going to assemble this in 3ds Max. If you save them with targets from Max, they always seem to end up with a little white border around them, as though there's something bleeding. You know, so there's some white bleeding from behind. I don't know why that is, but if you save it as a TIFF, everything should work fine. So if we come across to Max, and let's just start a new document. Okay, so a fresh new document in 3ds Max. We've saved this as a TIFF. The only other thing we need to know is what size this is. So it's 810 by 368. So what I'll do is make a plane in Max to match up with that. So 0.81 by 368 by 0.368. So now I can put my image on there. Oops, so it should be the other way around. So I just know that they're nice and they're not warped in any way like that. Right, so I'll get rid of these length and width segments on this plane and just collapse that to an editable poly. And if we go to our materials, so press M to open your material editor, just grab the material off there, and we want to take it from the diffuse colour and put it into the opacity as well. And then if we go into our opacity and we change the channel output from RGB intensity to alpha, we should get our alpha mapped leaves, so they're cut out. Another thing we want to do is to make sure that two-sided is turned on as well, so that we can see both sides. Okay, so now we can cut these out like this, and let's detach those as three different leaves, and I'll just centre the pivots for those as well to make life a bit easier. And what I'm going to do is just add a load of loops into this. So I'm just using Swift Loop to put some loops in. Then I'm going to take each one of these. I'll just get rid of any of these polys that haven't got anything on them, because there's no point in having them. Oops. So I'll just delete those. And I'll put FFD on. So just find the FFD in the modifier stack and 4x4 FFD. So if you go into the vertices, so just go, sorry, the control points, and then we can just move some of these around to bend this leaf a bit. So something like this. Collapse that back to an editable poly, do the same with all of them. So those, stick an FFD on, grab the control points, this one this way a bit, do, collapse that, and finally this one. Oops. Those, FFD on. Differently. Okay, so we've got 3 different leaves now. The next thing we can do is to put these onto we can make some little twigs for these actually. So if we bring our grid back, the easiest way to make a little twig, the thing to bear in mind with all this stuff that we're doing at the moment is that we're only going to bake. What we're doing is we're making a texture sheet to bake down. So we don't care too much about how many polys there are and that sort of thing. So we don't have to worry about any of that. What we want to do is just work as quickly as we can. So if we want to make a small little branch for these things to sit on, the easiest way to do that is going to be to make a small box. So just make a small box like this in the middle of your scene, and then you can use so convert that to an editable poly, and then if you go to freeform at the top, just make sure your modelling tools, your graphite modelling tools are dropped down, go to freeform at the top and find the branches tool. Okay, so now all we need to do is just click on this top poly and we can drag a little branch out like that. So what I would normally do with this is, that's fine, I'm just going to move some of the polys a bit, so I'm going to turn soft selection on. I can just move these a little bit like that, so I'm happy with how my twig looks. And let's get rid of those polys at the bottom there. So that's soft selection off. Okay, what I like to do now is to, if we go back to the branches tool, if I get my reference image up, so it's this one that I want, we've got all these little sort of bits sticking off this branch, and there's little kind of knobbly bits sticking out and that sort of thing. So we can put some of those in with our branch tool just by clicking and moving some bits out like this. it'll just make things look a little bit less regular, a bit more interesting. So if the branch tool doesn't do what you wanted it to do, just undo it and do something else. Okay, that's fine. So what I'll do now is, I think you get a nice result from this. At the moment it looks okay, but it's a little bit square, obviously, because we started with this box. So I quite like to first of all put a Pro Optimizer on. So you can find the Pro Optimizer in the modify list, Pro Optimizer. And if you click calculate, and let's just make this to be about 70 polys or so. So that'll just kind of triangulate it, and then we can turbo smooth it as well. And you get quite a nice, almost slightly random, twisted look to it, as though it's slightly knotted. And again, you know, it doesn't matter that there's how many polys are in here. I could put a noise modifier on this now if I wanted to, and mess around with that bit. And that'll kind of twist this up a little bit more. You don't have to do that. You can do. I'll leave it on. I've done it now. So I'll just collapse that back down to an editable poly, and I just want to unwrap this as well. So again, I'm not going to spend ages unwrapping this. It's obviously now a fairly complex object, but I'm just going to unwrap it in a way that looks okay. And it's really quick. So I'm just going to select all the polys on the front and just plane and map those like that. And then I'll select all of the other polys and just plane and map those as well. Might as well just stick that round in that direction. And so I'm just going to move those back. Okay, so let's just put a texture on this next. So we just want a kind of twiggy texture. In fact, we want a texture that looks a little bit like this wood in there. So let's just go to CG Textures and have a look for that. Okay, so I've just quickly gone and grabbed this texture. It's probably not quite ideal, but it will do. And I'll just crop this down a little bit. So I just want to quickly turn this into a tiling texture. So let's just make it 512 by 512. Let's just use the kind of stamp tool. So you can see all of this. I'm doing it quite quickly and quite messily, but this, on our final texture, all this stuff is going to be so small that it's going to be really hard to actually see exactly what's going on. So let me just offset that. So I'll just quickly make it into a texture that tiles reasonably like that. And let's just check the colour on this. So I just want to make it a little bit more brown as well. Colorizing it. Okay, that'll do for now. I can always change this later. Let's just save that. So it's going to go in here. twig texture. I'll save it as TIFF, it doesn't really make any difference in this case. Let's go to our material editor and find that in there and apply that to that. Okay. So you can see the unwrap on this isn't exactly amazing, but it'll probably do. Let's just actually go into our modifier. I can relax that, see if that helps. Okay, that's better. So you can see, although the unwrap's not great on that, there's these loads of little errors in here. It's fine. It's good enough. This is going to be, you know, on our texture sheet. If my screen is the whole, you know, if my screen is maybe a 2K texture, and this thing's going to be maybe sort of, you know, that big on it. So you're not going to be able to see any of those little errors. Okay, what I'll do now is I just want to make sure that my pivots for these things, for these leaves, are at the pivots, or at the kind of pivot point, so at the base of this leaf. So that one can go there. That one can go there. Right, so now that they're at that point, I can start to build these little twigs up. So I'll just take one of these, copy it, and stick it at the top, like that. And because my pivot's in the right place, this makes it easy to do this. That's that one. What I should say as well with making this tree is the way that you'll go about doing this kind of thing might be a little bit different depending on the species of tree that you're making and all that kind of stuff. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you've got good reference images and that you've actually got some proper imagery for things like the twig structure and the way that the leaves are arranged and all that kind of thing. Okay, so that's a pretty good start. Put another in there. I can scale this one down a bit maybe. And I'll flip that upside down so it's not so obviously the same leaf. Same with this one. Okay, so that's a little arrangement like that. I could also, if I look again at this piece of reference, I'm just building up a little sort of twig like that basically. I could, if I wanted to, model these acorns as well as little, just out of little spheres, and put those on. I'm not actually going to bother doing that for this. But what I am going to do is, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to just going to bring the base of that to be a bit thinner, like that. I think. Well, yeah, okay, that'll be alright. I want to make a couple more variations of this now, so that I've got, when I start building up my branch, I've got a nice bit of variety. So I'll stop the video here and I will make some of those, and then we'll start the next video and we'll make a full branch texture out of these small little pieces.